Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Sales Success Podcast, where we are passionate about helping you grow your business. Today, we are joined by Meredith Raber, who is a marketing strategist and coach, and she helps small business owners expand their reach with their marketing. So let's get into it. Meredith, could you tell us a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I am Meredith Raber, owner of Meredith Raber Marketing. I am a marketing strategist and a marketing coach. And I started my business way back when, seems like forever ago, in 2017. I was a corporate girl, 10 years, loved it. I was working in corporate advertising, loved my company. I loved my job, but I had two small boys at the time. And it was time for me to make a change. I couldn't be away from them for so long. And I kind of just took a pause and found the world of virtual assistants in 2016 is kind of when I started hearing about it. And back then, nobody knew what virtual assistants was, especially if you're in corporate. I was so siloed. And I kind of just dove in. I was like, this seems like something I can do from home while watching my kids. And so fast forward, it's been 7 years and I am now a boutique marketing agency. So using a lot of my experience from corporate, and now I've been doing a lot of social media marketing for small business owners and also coaching on marketing as well.
Amazing. So in my business, I focus on sales, and I think there's often a misunderstanding between sales and marketing. So I'd love you to just kind of tell us a little bit about what marketing means to you.
Marketing means to me, showcasing what you can do for someone. No one's going to know about your business if you don't talk about it, if you don't say what you can do for them. I think there's so many elements to marketing. I think we always think just like branding, right? Like we think like logo, colors, that's marketing, but there's so many other pieces to the puzzle. Who you're marketing to, your target audience, what your services are, what your solution is, your messaging. There's so much that goes into marketing. And now we're so lucky as small business owners, you don't need a huge investment to market your business. We've got social media, you can do it organically, there's so many different routes we can go as small business owners. So I think that was a great question. I'm trying to think of a really good one sentence to answer it, but I think marketing means to me is showing up for your community and showing them what you can do for them.
I love that. I think that little line there, I think, was perfect. The ability to talk about your business and what you do so that other people recognize how you can help them.
Yes, because I think it's hard. As small business owners, we get so scared to talk about our business, especially when you're just starting off, that, once you gain the confidence and you can talk about it, I feel like it's really important. It's a big part of the business to keep it moving,
Yeah, absolutely. It's how we get leads into the business that you then nurture and then sell to. But marketing and lead generation, I think, go hand in hand. And if you're not doing marketing, you're not going to get those leads in. And it's something that I talk about lead generation a lot, and the fact that I think that most business owners should be spending 80% of their time on lead generation or marketing. So getting your message out there so that the people that you want to be able to sell to and that you want to be able to serve know what it is that you're helping them with.
Yeah. And even if you're not, you do lead generation, but even if they don't jump on right away, people are watching. People are, maybe they're not ready for, jump in, work with you yet, but they're watching you. They're watching your content. They're doing all the things. So it's keep working at it so you can get more leads.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the fear of nobody responding to what you're putting out there, I think, stops a lot of people. And having the mindset of doing it anyway, even if no one responds to it, I think that's where most business owners need to get to. And what I try and kind of instill in my clients is taking the action and not focusing on the end result. So if you're not getting the sales in yet, try not to let that get you down, but focus on taking the action instead. So go out and market your business and do that anyway. So do the lives, do the posts, go and talk in front of other people. And even if it feels like you're not getting anything back from it, I guarantee you that you are. And like you said, you'll have people that are watching that just aren't quite ready to buy yet, but they'll be there building trust and things with you.
And I think like what you're saying, just getting used to it. When we first start out, a lot of us have never been a small business owner before. We don't know how to do this, so it's like just going out there and doing it, doing the action, taking the action. And I think a lot of the time too, we're hard on ourselves, especially when it comes to social media with like views and, oh, only 100 people saw it. But it's like, if you put 100 people in a room, that's kind of a lot of people. Like, you know what I mean? Like you only need one or two to be clients. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's switching the perspective too on like, we want to be getting our message out to qualified people, and the people that we are able to serve. So sometimes that helps when you're thinking about all those actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've known people that have built six figure businesses and they've got less than 1,000 followers because they've built a really engaged, loyal following. And then you get people that have got 100,000 followers who are really struggling to make sales because they don't have an engaged and loyal following that are going to buy all of their products. So I think the idea of going viral and having a huge following doesn't necessarily translate into having a successful business. And I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough, that you don't need a huge following to have a business.
Yeah. And sometimes going viral, yeah, you might get followers, but they're not the people that you can serve. So yeah, it's great from like a social perspective, vanity metrics. I'm not big for vanity metrics, but I know a lot of people are. But that's not always good because it's like, okay, but are those people, I can't serve them. There's no value I can give them. They just thought this video was funny,
Yeah, absolutely. And they've stayed for in case you do another funny video that they want to see. They haven't necessarily stayed because they want the products that you're providing.
Exactly.
So, in the world of marketing and social media marketing, are there things that you're seeing that work well? That are encouraging people to work with you? Is there something what do you teach your clients? I suppose is the question, in terms of how to get their message out there.
I think over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot, right? Like you are your brand, especially like people like us who are small business owners, and the more personal we can get. And that doesn't mean, a lot of the times our clients get nervous. Like, I don't want to show my family. I don't want to show, but there's ways to show, you behind the brand without showing everything. Like you don't need to be doing stories 24 hours a day, but there's ways to show peeks into your life, because I think what we've learned is like people want to see who's behind the scenes, who's behind the brand. So I feel like that's a big thing, you being, the front of your business, being your brand, depending on what service or product you offer. But for cases of ours, that's definitely where it is. We have to be out there so they know who we are and the services we're offering. I think too, there was a day, like when I first started, it was all about beautiful graphics and beautiful stock photos for social media, and even that was hard then, because Canva wasn't where it was and all the things that we have, the designers and stuff. But now it's really about like more authentic, like just jump on and talk, just do some B-roll and like give some tips over it. It's really changed the focus of social media. I think from like beautiful feeds, and yes, people's feeds are still beautiful and they spend time on covers and all that stuff, but it's really more about like the value you're providing. You don't need to be creating all of these graphics and stuff. You can just be providing value to your audience, which I think is huge. I think it's great. Like, anyone can pop on, do a live. Anyone can do a carousel now, right in like Instagram. You don't need all these things. So I think it's good because people can find who they're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. It's made it a lot more accessible for business owners because you don't need to be a graphic designer creating all of these amazing posts. You can just jump on, do a quick video, face to camera video, and give the value that you're passionate about and that is your area of expertise. And it makes creating content, I think, a lot easier because it's not as particular as it used to be.
Yeah. And I think when people hear like creating content, especially when they're a new business owner, it's so overwhelming, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I'm just like never going to be able to. But I still am a big fan of batching. That's what we do for our clients. We try to plan a month in advance. That doesn't always work depending on what their business is or their service they provide. But I feel like even if you're like, say you're starting for yourself, if you can just plan like 2 or 3 posts in advance, it just gives you breathing room, like to think through the next ones. And you're not just waking up being like, what am I going to do today? What should I say? And then that's when I think people like just get into this like wasting time when it shouldn't even take that much time. So I'm still a big fan of batching, like, and like when you're looking for inspiration or trying to figure out what you want to post on social media, think through like consultations you've had or client meetings you've had. Like, what are those people talking about? What are their pain points? How can you help them? And I think that really helps, like creating tip videos or educational videos or anything like that that you want to create for your social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to somebody once, I can't remember who it was, but the conversation we were having was that every conversation you have about your business is content, which I thought was a really interesting way of looking at it. So all the conversations that you're having with potential clients, or the conversations that you're having with existing clients, or the conversations that you're having with other business owners, all of this should make up what you're putting in your content, because it's the real life conversations that you're having in and about your business. And I think when you look at it like that, it makes creating content a lot easier, because you're not having to think, what am I going to post about today? You've got a bank of conversations that you have every day about the business, and every time you have another conversation, make note of it, so that when you're doing your content, you've got that kind of list to work from. And I completely agree. I think bulking your content is the key. I think when you're doing them, if you're doing your posts every day, it takes so much brain power to think of something every day, and it takes you, I believe it takes you longer doing it every day than it would if you just sat down for a couple of hours and did a couple of weeks worth of posts and just kind of knocked them all out, because you get into that kind of creative flow, and you're able to create them more easily than if you were doing them every day.
And I think too, like having a realistic schedule is important, right? Like I think a lot of people get overwhelmed because they see so-and-so showing up every day, like every post, they've got to post every day. They're on stories. Like, how are they doing it? Well, they probably have a team like us doing it for them, right? So if you're a small business owner and it's just you, think about what's realistic. Like, are 3 posts a week realistic for you? And once you figure out what that is, 2 or 3 posts, and once you stick with it, then maybe you can up it. Like once you've got a process and you're batching, maybe you can batch 2 weeks in advance. Like, these are the content ideas I have. This is the content I'm going to create. Once you have 2 weeks in advance, then it just gives you that much more space. And like you said, it takes up so much brain space worrying about what you're posting. It's like if you just have it written down. And I think too, organization of content is really big, and everybody organizes it different, right? Like everybody has their way. Some people use project management. They use like Asana or Trello or Google Sheets or Airtable. There's so many ways, but just finding a way that's like makes sense for you, because everybody works in a different way. So it's like, do you want to see everything in one place? Are you okay with clicking through? Do you have a team? Do you need to be assigning tasks? So there's so many different ways to do it. But the most important part is to make sure you understand it and it works for your creativity. And you can go in there and jot down ideas, whatever it is, even if it's just like a Google Doc and that's like how you want to do it. That works, because I think people get lost in the like organization. I should be doing it this way, but it's like confusing to me. It's like, no, pick a spot, like an organizational system that works for you and your team, and go from there.
Definitely. I think we get stuck in the should, and finding a way that works for you is absolutely the key. And you don't have to be doing something the exact same way that someone else is doing, because the likelihood is their way is not going to work for you, because we all think differently and we all have different ways that we like doing things. I was speaking to a client this week who is notorious for using like 5 different notebooks, and she has notes everywhere, and it personally drives me insane, and she can never find anything. And this week she messaged me to tell me that she's finally moved to a digital notebook so that she has access to it everywhere. Everything's all in one place, and it genuinely made me so happy, because for me, that's how I would always do it. And I knew that she was stressed out with the 5 different notebooks. So that made me really happy this week. But yeah, it's finding that thing that works for you. And sometimes you have to play around with different ways of doing things until you get to that one thing that is the right way of doing it for you.
And I think that's totally normal. I mean, I've switched systems with my own stuff, with my clients, like multiple times because you're like, oh, this is better. Oh, I think this is going to be better for them. Or they review things differently. So I'm like, oh, this one will be better for them. Let's go this route. I mean, I think just finding something that makes it easy for you is really where it's at. And then you have a whole bunch of content in one area. And if you need inspiration, if there's like a day you just can't think of anything, go back to what you've already posted and see, did it work? Did it not work? Is it aligned with what you're still, who you're serving? That sort of thing.
You said two things there that I think are fabulous. The first one was that if you pick a solution and then you don't like it, you can change it. And
Always.
which I think people forget. Like, just because you decided on a system doesn't mean you have to keep that forever. Like, you can change systems as much as you want to. If you've picked something because you think it will work and then you find out that it isn't working the way that you thought it would, you absolutely can change that. And I think that's one of the greatest things about running your own business, is that you get to make the decisions about what you're doing in the business. So you absolutely can change it. And then repurposing existing content, so content that you've already posted, because the likelihood is most people aren't going to go and scroll down your Instagram profile and look at what you were posting 5 months ago. So those posts, if they're still relevant, use them again.
Yeah. And I think too, like not only scrolling and seeing what, looking through your analytics and seeing what did well, but also if it's something that you talk about a lot, you're going to find that there's certain topics you talk about a lot, right? Because it's how you serve your clients. It's a pain point. Like for me, a lot of the time it's like hiring your first teammate. So I talk about that a lot. Like, how do you get your first VA or your first teammate on board? And that's just something that a lot of my clients need help with because they're starting to expand and they're scaling. So sometimes I'll just look back and like, okay, what have I talked about before here, and look back and see what else performed well and be like, okay, this is something that people need. Like, we need to talk more about this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we forget that we can reuse that content, especially as small business owners. But I've seen some huge coaches where I've looked at a post and I'm like, I'm sure I've seen that before. And I end up seeing their photos like time and time again, because they do exactly that. They reuse the content because it's still relevant. It's still what their audience want to hear. And like you said, it's the topic that they're talking about time and time again.
Yeah. And I think too, especially when the ideas, you're just like, I don't know what to talk about, like look back on what you did and you can just repurpose it. And obviously it's important to bring in new ideas and new content. If there's something new in your business that you're helping your clients with, definitely bring that in. But I think it's always good to rely on what you've done in the past too.
Yeah, absolutely. And making sure, I think the key there is making sure that what you've been posting in the past is still relevant to what your audience
Yes.
is
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
now.
yeah. Because if you look back, I mean, the years, I mean, I used to talk about all things that I'm like, I don't do that anymore. So I don't talk about it anymore. You know what I mean? But at the time, it was a big deal. It's what I was helping my
Mm.
clients with. And so you kind of evolve as your business evolves and you start giving new services or providing different things to your clients that's going to evolve too.
Yeah, for sure. So when you have clients that are looking at the content that they're making, or you're making it for them, have you got some strategies that they can employ around making the content more professional, or the things that you should be including in the videos that they're doing, or like how to structure a caption, that sort of thing?
I think it depends on the industry and what their ultimate goal is with social media. Is it just a branding? Like they just want a portfolio to show on social media and show what their, projects are or what they're working on. I think every business strategy is different because I always like to look at, okay, what are you trying to achieve in the next 3 months? Okay, tell me those goals. And from there, we kind of create a social strategy. So every business is a little bit different. I do think, just in video content's huge right now. Like you have to be doing video content. I know clients hate hearing it, but it's like, we've got to do it. Like, and there are ways to do it without having your client, like if your client can't be on video, but it's just so much more effective to have your client on video. And sometimes that's tough, right? Because we serve people across the US. So my local clients, it's really great because I can go and film them and I can film them in action and I can get B-roll and I can get everything I need to like create fun reels and that sort of thing. But when you're across, the United States, sometimes that's tough because they don't want to film themselves. But I feel like what we've seen a lot is a lot of B-roll. So you don't have to talk. I know a lot of people get nervous talking to camera. You don't have to talk to camera, but still having you in the film, in the video is really huge because they want to see you. They want to see who's behind the brand. And so that's something. And also, as far as video goes, I think one question to like always ask, like I think sometimes people get caught up in like the hype of reels and like being funny. And if you're a content creator and you're funny, like that's your thing. But if you're like a small business owner, I think it's important to remember, like, why am I posting this? Like, what is this video going to say about my business or say to my target audience, or, you know, like, what's the goal of it? I think sometimes we get caught up in just like creating videos, but it's like, if it's not an educational or tip or something like that, or talking about your services, like, is this like something funny that my audience is going to think is funny? Are they moms and they're going to relate to what I'm going through? Those kinds of questions I think are important, because again, we care about people liking our content, but we care about our target audience liking our content. So sometimes I think that's tough too.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's going back to the ideal client work and making sure that you understand the best ways to connect with your ideal client and what sort of content is it that they want to be seeing and that they want to consume.
Yeah. And I think a good way to think about this is like, when you look on social media, like, what are your behaviors? What are you looking at? Always take it back to like what you do. Like, I'm the like person at night, like 9 p.m. when my kids are asleep, like I'm scrolling through things, looking at people's stories. I love stories. So I do a lot of stories because I like to watch people's stories. I like to see what they're doing. So it's kind of interesting to like think of your behavior and then think, okay, maybe I should create, if your ideal content client is like you, maybe I should be creating more content like that, you know, that sort of thing.
I love that. Actually, that's one thing I was going to ask you about, is if you could give us your take on stories and what we should be doing on stories. Because I think this is where, as you said earlier, this is where people get concerned that they're going to have to share their whole life. But I think stories can be a really good tool for selling through. So yeah, I'd love to just get your take on what you would post on stories, how often we should be posting on stories, how we can post on stories without sharing our entire lives.
Yeah, I love stories, so I'm a little biased. Personally, I love stories because I do love, like, even like colleagues, other people in the industry. I love seeing what they're doing. I love seeing if they're co-working with people or other people that they're in masterminds with. Like, I love seeing all of that. So I think stories is huge because I feel like, especially as service providers, you know, we're trying to sell our services, right? So this is somewhere where, yes, you can sell your services, and I'm sure you have more to say on that, but it's also a place just to be you. So like I have kids, so I do show my kids in stories, not so much in my feed as much anymore, but this is kind of where I show, okay, today we painted pumpkins. Oh, I went on my walk today. Like, this is what I'm doing in my daily life. I got coffee with a friend, then I co-worked, and then I did my walk. This is who I listen to on my podcast. Like, you guys should listen to this podcast. This podcast is really great. And these things don't feel invasive to me because it's just like, I'm not sharing everything I'm doing all day, although it does seem like I'm sharing a lot. It's just little tidbits that I think my client, like potential clients, would want to know. Like, what podcasts are you listening to? Oh, she has kids too. Oh, how does she balance that? Like, I'm just kind of thinking through like what I would want to see. So, I think stories are really fun too. And I also think for me starting out, I mean, it's been a long time now. So now I'm just like film to camera. It doesn't matter. I talk all the time. But when you're just starting out, it's so nerve wracking, right? And I think stories is a good way to like start talking to your audience, because it is weird. Like, if you think about it, you're just like talking to no one, you know, like when you first start out. And now it's so normal to me. Like, hey guys, hope you had a great weekend. Like, and I just like talk. But I remember how nerve-wracking that was. And I think stories is a good way to start. And you'll probably have more to say about this, but like, start your message. Like, you're like, it gets a little like bejambled in the beginning. You're kind of like, oh, what am I selling? This is what I'm selling. Does anyone want to buy it? And it's like stories, you just keep doing it. Like, every day you can say, oh, and if you need help, you know, social media management, these are the services we offer. Feel free to like book a consultation. Here's the link, you know. And now things are so great that you can put links in your stories. I mean, it just makes it so much easier for someone following you to be like, I want that freebie. I want a consultation. Like, Instagram is making it very easy. So I think it's a good way to start. perfecting your message too, and talking directly in like a more laid back kind of way. Like, hey, today wasn't a good day for me. Like, I did not have a good day at work. Like, this was rough, or, you know, like I'm working through some things, da 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 da. And some people do share a lot, and that's great. Like, I'm here for it. I think there's a big piece of storytelling that I think is huge when we're getting to know people, even if it's online. But I think there's definitely ways, and you can figure out what you're comfortable with. Like, I've had a lot of clients that are like, I don't want to show my kids, I don't want to show family or anything. I'm like, there's still ways to show personal things. What's your favorite coffee? Where do you work? What does your office look like? What do you do for working out? And it doesn't have to be even a picture of you. It could be you, like a yoga studio. You know what I mean? Like, there's ways to get personal without being too personal, I feel.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a great way of connecting with your audience in a more informal way. And the way I quite often explain it to my clients who aren't super comfortable with it is share the behind the scenes of your business. So you don't have to share anything personal. You don't have to share the kids or your husband or your friends and family, but share the behind the scenes of the business. So what are you working on today? Where are you working from? What have you struggled with in the business this week? That kind of thing. So it doesn't get super personal, and your personal life can still stay personal, but it gives you a way of connecting with your audience in a more informal way.
And I love what you said too, like what you're working on. A lot of the times when we're working with clients and launches are coming up and they're working on courses or whatever, I'm like, put it in your stories, because we want people to be excited, you know, like, oh, I'm working on a new course. What is it about? You know, and like doing polls and stuff, because it's like, then your audience that's already following you is like, oh, what is this new course? Oh, I need to hear about it. And, oh, I did this for the course today. Oh, I approved this for the course or whatever. And that's a way of like giving sneak peeks, and they're feeling like, oh, they're in on it, you know? And so I think it's a great way to get behind the scenes. And I like what you said, like, you can just do behind the scenes of the business for sure. You know, like, I think that's an easy way to still feel connected. I think a lot of the time too, people are like, well, what if someone doesn't like something? It's like, well, okay, who cares? And they're not your ideal like target audience. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of good if someone doesn't like something about you and they unfollow you. That's fine, because they probably aren't going to be a good client for you anyways. So I think, you know, some people share a lot of things, but even if you're sharing certain things and you're worried, oh, will someone like, who cares? It's okay. If they don't, you wouldn't work well together anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I love an unfollow. I'm happy for somebody to unfollow me if they don't like my content. Like, you're obviously not meant to be in my space if you don't like what I'm posting. And if you don't like what I'm posting, please unfollow me, because clearly we're not going to work well together if you don't like the things that I'm sharing. But I get it. Like, people don't like the feeling that someone doesn't like what they're posting, but it's just getting used to the idea of there are like 7 billion people in the world. Like, you're not going to get on with all of them, and it's okay if some of them remove themselves from your audience. That's a perfectly normal thing to happen.
And I think too, another concern we get from clients is like, oh, what if I'm posting too much and I'm like talking about my services too much? And like, what if like aunt, you know who, or a friend from high school or like a college friend is like annoyed? I'm like, they don't need to be following your business account. Like that, like, this is what your account is for. Like, this is like, you're not putting this on your personal profile. This is your business account. And like, that is what it is meant for, is to sell. So I think that I had those concerns from the beginning when I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, oh gosh, what if they see it and they think it's weird, or like they don't understand why I'm selling, or, you know, that sort of thing. But you get over that with time.
Yeah, absolutely. It just takes practice. You just, as you move forward, you'll get more used to that happening. And like we said, if it's somebody that you used to go to school with, or it was your old neighbor or someone, like, they're probably not the people that you want to be selling to anyway, because they're probably not your ideal client. And it's perfectly okay if they remove themselves.
Yeah, of course.
So I would love to just get your take on, if we've got people that are listening that are struggling with their social media content and they're struggling with showing up consistently, where would you suggest that they kind of start to get themselves out of that place?
So first, I would pick a schedule that you can keep to, that's realistic for you. And I think a lot of the time our recommendation is always 3, but sometimes that's too much, 3 times a week. So maybe 2 posts a week is more realistic to you. That's great. Like start there. So pick something that you know you can fulfill, because we can always add. We can always add more posts once we've gotten there. Then I think what I would do is pick a system that you're going to use to jot down your ideas. Even if it's just, a Google Doc, that's fine. Like if that's where you're going to keep all your ideas for your content, definitely pick an organizational system of where you can go and have ideas. So when you are ready to create content, you're not just like sitting there and it takes you 2 hours when it should only take you an hour. And then my other recommendation is to definitely batch. And it doesn't have to be a month. If a month, say you're doing 2 times a week and 8 posts just seem like I can't think that through. That's too many things to think about. That is fine. I would start with maybe even a week. Even if you get 2 posts completed with the ideas and your hashtags and what kind of visual you're going to do, that's great, because that gives you a whole week of breathing room, and start there. But eventually I would recommend always a month in advance if you can, because it is, once you get there, and it can take a couple months, maybe you start with 1 week in advance and you do that for a month, and then you're like, okay, I'm getting used to this. And then you do 2 weeks in advance. And then you're like, okay, it might take you a little time. But once you get, a month's worth of content ideas ready for you to go, it really does give you a lot of room to breathe, like a lot of room, and even a lot of room to like have more client conversations, have more consultations, see what what they need help with now. That you'll have so many ideas. You'll just like your little, wherever you're keeping all your content ideas, it's going to be written for you before it's time to sit down again. So it's really just making the room for yourself. And then also just being realistic with yourself. If you can't post it, you can't post it. Move on. Like, you know what I mean? One thing I think I hear from a lot of people is, if I go on vacation, I'm going to lose people and followers are going to like leave. And believe me, I've gone away from social media for weeks and not much changes, guys. Like, I don't know. It's just like, yes, they want to hear from you, but if you need to take a week for yourself and you're on vacation, or you just need a week off, like, it is fine. And then just pick up when you're ready, because nothing's worse than like showing up on social media and just being like tired and not excited. Like, I would rather our clients like take a breath and like wait till the next week when you're motivated, when you're excited, when you're ready to share value, when you're ready to educate your audience. That's when you should be doing it. And that's why so many people batch video on one day, because they get the day that they're most excited and they get like 10 videos done. You know what I mean? I'm sure you do it too. And it's like, that's the day that you get so much done, and then you're done for the whole month, and it's great.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think people realize the headspace that you free up when you do bulk or batch your content. Like, thinking of one post every day doesn't feel like it would take up that much space in your brain, but it's surprising how much it does. And when you batch for the month, as you've suggested, when you get that whole month of content done in one afternoon, you've then got an entire month where you don't have to think about the content that you're posting, and all of those hours that you would have spent thinking, what am I going to post today, and then creating that post, you can use that for other revenue generating activities within the business. So you can go and do more speaking events, or you can do more lead generation in other ways, so that you're getting more sales into the business, which is the key for most business owners.
Yeah. And I also think that just like you said, the headspace, freeing up the headspace for you to do the things that you need to do, like you said, lead generation or other things. And also when you do plan in advance, I think a lot of people get scared. Oh, well, those are the only posts I can do. No, no, no. If something comes up that you just got off a client call and you're like, oh, this is something that I'm dealing with a lot of clients right now, let's talk about it. It doesn't mean you can't add that in. That's even better. Then you have more posts banked. Like, the ideal is to have a lot of posts banked so you can just kind of add in new stuff as you go. So you can always switch it. Or if all of a sudden you've got a new service or a new offer, or you're doing, a sale or something, you can add it in. It's nice to have that done. And then you can kind of tweak as you go.
Yeah, for sure. It takes the pressure off. Like, if you know that you've got posts going out, whatever your schedule is. So let's say it's the 3 times a week. If you know you've got that done for the next month, then you don't have to worry if you don't have an idea on that day. But if you come up with an idea, then absolutely you should continue to post that, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, don't hold back. I mean, if you've got an idea and you're feeling really motivated about it, you can do it that day and then just like move that schedule, whatever post you had, move it to the next week or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been really useful.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. My 3 key takeaways from today's episode would be to look at the marketing that you're doing at the moment in your business and analyze whether it's working for you. So, is what you're putting out there encouraging your ideal clients to come and speak to you and work with you? And if it's working, how can you scale that and do more of it? And if it's not working, what do you need to be doing differently? My second one would be to do things that feel right for you and for your potential clients. So, if that is posting every day, then post every day. If it's sharing more on stories, then share more on stories. But do something that feels authentic for you, because that's what's going to connect you to your ideal clients the best. And don't feel like you need to be doing the same thing that someone else is doing just because that's working for them. Because if it doesn't feel right for you, it's probably not going to work for you. And my third thing would be to try and get comfortable with doing video content. As Meredith said, it's really popular. It's really easy to do once you get comfortable with doing it. And it's a really easy way of connecting with your clients and building that trust with them. But thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next time.